shirt is our state flag, the pit bull is our state bird, and cannabis is our state flower. I am hoping that this becomes a routine Sunday deal where you can count on every Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Pacific, or every Sunday early afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll be on, and we will be taking a spike back to the goddamn narrative. I am joined this morning by my friend and my co-host from the Free Assange Vigil series. She is the U.S. spokeswoman for Unity for J, and she is also working with Susie Dawson for the One versus Five Eyes project. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, Christy Dopf. How you doing?
Hey, Steve. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm frazzled as always. Frazzled.
It's okay, man. It's all gonna be good. It's all gonna be good.
The first time is always special.
I love little bits of life advice from my producer like that. That's just good times. We found out, or I guess we discovered yesterday that Nils Melzer, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, is pissed. Fear bureaucrat. He's pissed.
Yes.
Before I pull up the article, let's kind of set the scene here, and you've been on the ground with this since Unity for J started, so please take the lead on this.
All right. So, well, let's back up to earlier this week when there was a technical hearing for Julian Assange in London. There was a new judge. And the preface that this was not a bail hearing. His lawyers had not had the opportunity to apply for bail yet. But this judge decided upon herself to act as if there was a bail application and turn it into a bail hearing. And so essentially she denied his ability to be released today, September 22nd. So I think everyone is a little surprised that that happened on this particular day because it wasn't supposed to be talked about at this particular. He is not serving time for any sort of charges which have never been filed in 9 years for an investigation in Sweden.
And Craig Murray, one of the more vocal and prominent and I guess quote unquote famous defenders of Julian Assange, followed through to the logical conclusion that you made and wrote a brilliant article saying there's no way around it. Julian Assange is a political prisoner now, and what I can't fucking, there we go, a little bit better. There's been no reverberation through even independent media about this. Like our regular, lefty content creators and people that have been elevated to damn near hero status because they've spoken some truth to power aren't making this a rallying cry. Holy fuck, we've got this guy who's an obvious political prisoner who is being tortured and slowly executed for nothing more than revealing the crimes of empire. The bail jumping thing, as Craig Murray pointed out, is absolute garbage. They have no legitimate reason to hold him in a prison that's been nicknamed the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom, other than he printed some stuff that they didn't like.
Right. So the judge felt that because he jumped bail, and I say jumped bail in quotations, because we all know he applied and received asylum from Ecuador. So because he jumped bail, he was basically a flight risk and should stay in prison until his U.S. extradition hearing, which is set for February of 2020. But as we kind of discussed before, wouldn't be surprised if it got delayed, pushed back. Right now, the UK court system is not operating rule of law, it seems. So, I mean, this almost gives them permission to hold him indefinitely at this point, because really, as the U.S. attempts to build some sort of case against him, and as we have seen it many times broken down by many amazing people who understand the law and what these indictments are actually saying, it doesn't seem like the U.S. has a very strong case. But who knows what else they've got up their sleeve. And right now they just have the UK holding him indefinitely until they're ready and you know, they want to pursue this hearing. So yeah, it's really, I mean, what else are we going to call it? What is the excuse going to be? Who, you know, the naysayers that we so come up against in the Free Assange movement, what else are we going to call it? What is he serving time for now? He is a political prisoner, and I have not seen yet a good argument against that term being used, and I think we're officially there. And wow, it just, I don't know how many times I have to say Julian Assange was right. I say it a lot.
Well, and this is something that he was predicting back in like 2010.
Yeah, almost a decade ago.
Yeah, and for that, you know, smeared or laughed at or ridiculed or ignored by all these very smart people and very serious journalists who now, even though they can't bring themselves to say his name out loud, will admit under pressure that the charges against him range from fabricated to spurious to illegal.
Yeah, I wish I had a list of just how many people over the last decade have naysayed and called him paranoid. You know, oh, he's hiding in a closet in the embassy because he's, you know, his ego needs to be checked. The U.S. is not going to try to get him. Just, I don't know, the bullshit headlines that have come up over the years, and even as recent of few months before he was arrested even. I mean, the mentality of the media who should be supporting their own has just, it's been pretty ugly and pretty disgusting to watch people naysay and not defend their own journalist and publisher.
To the point that it actually pissed off Nils Melzer.
Yes.
So let's go to this article real quick, and this comes out of the Morning Star, which is a left-leaning paper out of the UK, I believe. And let's see. So, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture Nils Melzer tells me that Assange's case is not about law, but rather about politics. Melzer says, trying to win any aspect of this case in the judicial arena has been a losing game for almost a decade because, from the outset, this case has been decided politically. His right to a fair trial has been systematically violated by all involved states.
Yes, exactly. Like that quote is just dead on. I mean, we can talk about the UK court system right now and what they're doing and how politically motivated their decisions are. But let's step back to the arrest on April 11th, when his asylum and his citizenship was just taken away. And no due process of law was followed there. I mean, there should have been a process followed to remove asylum, to remove citizenship, and that didn't happen. Ecuador removed both and invited the UK in and let him be arrested and taken out, dragged out.
Well, so and let's be a little bit more clear about that. Ecuador took a $4 billion bribe to sell Julian Assange to the United Kingdom on behalf of their paymasters, the United States.
Yes.
And that's unequivocally important because we've got the literal selling of a human being who sought asylum because Sweden wouldn't guarantee him that they wouldn't immediately turn him over to the U.S. for extradition. And he said, well, if I can't have a fair trial in Sweden over these completely false allegations, I'm going to seek asylum. He sought asylum. He was granted asylum. Like, everything about his removal is 100% outside of the law, extrajudicial.
Yes. And because he had that asylum, and because then he was later granted citizenship, he should have been allowed to go to Ecuador safely. And the UK refused that for him. They would not let him leave to go to Ecuador. The plan, I believe, was never to stay in the embassy for years upon years. It was to eventually go to Ecuador after he sought asylum, and he later got citizenship. So, I mean, this has been going on. And, I mean, we can also talk about how Sweden has tried to drop and then did drop the investigation, and the UK.
Well, let's get into that, but I want to finish a couple of quotes on this article.
We'll go more into this.
Because it directly relates to what you were just talking about. And the quote from Melzer is, if this were about applying the law, he never would have been convicted of bail violation simply for seeking and receiving diplomatic asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. If this were about applying the law, he would not be in extradition detention under a U.S. indictment of espionage simply for doing investigative journalism. And this is, again, Nils Melzer, U.S. Special Rapporteur on Torture, laying out the case that the media should be making, laying out the case that the Australian government should be making, because he is still a citizen of Australia.
Yes.
And for the UN Rapporteur on Torture to have to come in and in one article do the job of 99% of the entire fucking global media and do the job that the Australian government should have been doing to protect one of their citizens 10 years later is just absolutely incredible to me.
Yes. I say this a lot. I'm really tired of people not doing their jobs and not doing them well. And I feel like that with the media. I mean, not only are they not pointing these things out, but they're also continually reporting false smears. They're continually getting the facts wrong. I mean, if you and I can sit and report and talk and have a conversation about the real facts of this case, how hard is it for a paid journalist in a mainstream media corporation who has the money to make a story, do a well-written article? How hard is it? It has to be on purpose that the media is refusing to stand up for him and refusing to even report things correctly concerning this case.
It goes back to the Upton Sinclair quote that I like to throw around when it's applicable, and that is, it is difficult for a man to do his job when his salary depends on him not understand, or it's difficult for a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it.
Yes.
And that's what we see more often than not in corporate media, and to a degree left media, because the self-censorship that people put themselves through, going out of their way to make sure Julian Assange's name isn't in the title of their video because it means demonetization, or sneaking in a segment about Julian Assange in the midst of covering the horse race, because while they may still care about Julian Assange, they also care about being able to continue to make money doing their show.
Yes. Yeah, there is a lot of self-censorship, and a lot of people who are afraid to talk about this, just like you said, because they get demonetized, they lose subscribers. The independent media is starting to be infected by this just as much as the mainstream media, and that's really unfortunate in this situation, because we need the independent media to do the job of journalists, of everybody, because it's, just this exact situation that has happened this week. Maybe we've seen a handful of articles. I don't know the exact number, but not very many reporting on this exact situation of him not being released today.
Well, and what's particularly disturbing about that is that you don't get accurate reporting about anything if you don't have at least the veneer of a free press, or at least the veneer of an unbought or independent media. And when they say first they came for the journalists and then I don't know what happened after that, I mean, that's some real shit right there. I guess through what you've done through Unity for J, and through what an awareness campaign based off of that, and the people that you work with have done, is carry the fucking load for the vast majority of even independent content creators. And it's an incredible amount of work and an incredible body of work that has been produced by the people involved in Unity J and the Unity for J and the archive junkies and the research crew that will pour through document after document after document to be like, no, we have this, we got it on wax, it's right here. And that shit that outlets with, millions to billions of dollars in budget annually, if not, several 100,000 per show, should be able to pay someone a living wage to just go and look up anytime they need. All of that information is there. It's all right there. So it's not just a willingness to ignore it. There's got to, at some level, be orders to ignore it. Because any journalist, anyone who has that fucking degree from Columbia or wherever, they know how to look up and fact check. They know how to research a story. They've all had to do it. It's deliberately walking around that to get to a presupposed conclusion that has no basis whatever in reality, but needs to become a narrative in order for the ruling elites to keep getting away with this shit and to be allowed to do this shit in the dark and have no exposure on war crimes, on financial crimes, on crimes against, fucking children being trafficked for rape purposes. Like, we will only get to find out about stuff like that when someone in the 1% has a beef with someone else in the 1%. Like, that's when you'll find out who's really a crook, or who's really fucking kids, or who's really responsible for war crimes. As if one of them gets in a spat.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, even a few years ago, I used to think, well, at least in the U.S., our media is so left-leaning. But then really through watching this play out in the media in the last few years, I realized, no, the media is state-sponsored. The left is supposed to be anti-war. The left is supposed to be standing up for all these things that you just mentioned. And that is not happening in our media. They are not holding anybody accountable. And the Julian Assange case is really a litmus test for your media, because if they're not reporting the facts and they're not holding the feet to the fire of what was exposed by those leaks and how we all should be standing up and insisting that the war criminals are the ones waiting trial, then what else are they not telling the truth on? I mean, whose ass are they covering by not reporting the truth on this situation? And that's the government's. The U.S. government, in other countries, it's their own governments, and by proxy, a lot of times it's because of the U.S. As we've seen in Julian Assange's case, the U.S. has has intermingled with Ecuador, with Sweden, with the UK, and likely Australia, because the PM of Australia just met with Trump a couple days ago.
That's
I think
right.
it was Friday, yesterday, and nothing was said. No conversation about Julian Assange, and Australia is just going to keep bowing down to the U.S. and not try to ruffle any feathers.
And we have seen a smidge of reporting on that. I did when I was scrolling Twitter this morning. Find a couple of people who had talked about the fact that Australia's PM and Trump had met and spent some time together conversing, and not once was the name Julian Assange mentioned. But we also found out through MEB and her diligence that there was a hearing that took place unannounced where they were trying to keep Assange supporters out of the gallery, and nobody knows what the fuck happened. I'm gonna pull that up.
Okay. Yeah, this is getting really interesting. Just the number of little protocol hearings that have happened so far, how the UK is trying to divert attention away from them, whether it's not allowing people in, moving the rooms around. And like we saw this one on Friday, it looked like MEB had, let's see, her tweet was...
I've got it pulled up right now. It says rang up, and it
okay.
gives the telephone number. And if you can't see this on your computer screen for the people watching, the country code is 0300 303 0645, Westminster Magistrates Court, for info regarding last Friday's court hearing relating to Julian Assange. I have been asking to inquire directly with the extradition unit via email. Anyone can send an email to make inquiries at westminster.ij@justice.gov.uk. What happened was, let's see, and these are her words. During a telephone inquiry with Westminster Magistrates Court regarding legal developments widely reported about Julian Assange case, I discovered that a previously unknown case management court hearing would take place on Friday, the 20th of September at 10 a.m. The court clerk could not give me any particular information other than the hearing was scheduled. My inquiries on the subject via email to the extradition unit of the Westminster Magistrates Court gave no fruit, as I received no reply. Still, I shared the information on Twitter, which prompted a small number of supporters to turn up on the day to check on what was developing at the courts. And she goes on with her story, but what the crux of it is that a couple of people who supported Julian Assange were allowed in. No one could get any detail other than the judge mumbles Julian Assange's name and case closed, and that's the end of the hearing. Westminster Magistrates Court isn't releasing any information about it whatsoever. And they tried to block other supporters from coming in, telling them that the hearing was already over, or telling them that they had reached capacity, and they're like leaning in and concede that there's nobody in the fucking room and that it's still going on. And they're like, how you're lying to my fucking face and I can see with,
Right. I think what we're seeing here is just a small preview of what would happen in the U.S. We're seeing this denying that, people can actually see there's people in a courtroom. There's not very many. It's not full, but there is something happening. But the UK is just, nope, nothing's happening, nothing to see here. And I think this is exactly what we've been saying will happen in the U.S. But now you can actually see it's happening in the UK, that there is no fair trial here. There is no justice here. There is no let it play out, let the courts work it out here. This is going to be done behind closed doors. There's not going to be public transcripts that we can read and really get a taste of what's happening, what evidence is being used, what's the testimony from people. This is all happening without the people seeing it. And it's starting now. It's been starting the last 6 months with just little pieces here and there getting changed. And I think it's only going to build until we get to this extradition hearing. And then when and if it goes to the U.S., it's just going to be in the dark.
Well, and we know that for multiple reasons, but because of the first person testimony of CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou, who went through the exact same court, the exact same judge, with, if not the exact same jury, certainly the same type of jury, where the people that that Julian Assange would be presented to, as it were, are either directly related or close to members of the intelligence community by the very nature of the fact that it's the Eastern District of Virginia court, known as Espionage Court, where a big chunk of America's, national security state lives.
Exactly. That's a really important point to understand who the jury may be made up of, and how just that piece, in essence, isn't going to make this a fair trial. That if you have members or family members of people that work in the intelligence community and you're trying somebody for exposing intelligence secrets of the United States of America, probably not going to be a fair trial. Probably they're going to come in with a pretty hefty bias.
Well, and we know that they're not public. We know that they operate under the shroud of national security. We know from John Kiriakou that Julian Assange would not even be allowed to access the evidence being used against him, nor would his lawyers. Because, again, it falls under the rubric of national security. And that's what makes Andrew Yang's comment when he finally got cornered and had to make a statement on camera. But it was Dak that did that. That's what made his statement so concerning, because he's like, oh, well, we'll let justice play out, and this needs to come in front of a courtroom. That way, then, the lawyers can have their day, and based on the merits of the evidence. That's what, are you fucking kidding me? Are you naive or lying or both? Like,
stupid or liar.
You're supposed to be the math guy and the smart guy, and if you are honestly that naive of how American courtroom proceedings work, you don't belong anywhere near controlling
American courtroom, like specifically Eastern District of Virginia courtrooms. Like, this isn't just, going downtown and having a hearing over a few misdemeanors that the American public goes through. This is government courtrooms near Washington, D.C. And Andrew Yang has no clue what he's talking about when he says, oh, we'll just let it play out. We'll just let justice. He should stand trial because he hurt people. That's the way we keep it. He hurt people. Please give me a list of names. The United States government has testified in Chelsea Manning's trials that nobody was injured or killed based on those leaks. If they have new information since that testimony, then they better present it, because this narrative of he hurt people, people were killed, people's lives were destroyed. The people he hurt were the war criminals. The people nobody's lives were destroyed because these war criminals are still out walking on the street. But when we say, oh, he hurt people, he's ruining lives, I still have not seen any evidence of that.
And we know that that's bullshit because of the Mark Davis video and his first-person testimony and his first-person video accounts of how Julian Assange was being fucked over by MI5, by the CIA, via The Guardian, and via the New York Times. We know that. We know Julian Assange by himself removed 10,000 names in a fucking night so that people specifically would not be heard. And we know that the CIA refused to fucking comment, or the Pentagon, I think, refused to fucking address the issue when they were asked, please, will you vet this information? Will you tell us if this is that? And they're like, we're not fucking touching that, buddy. No, their non-participation signed the fucking fate of anyone who would be exposed out of those leaks. Their lack of, I don't know, willingness, cooperation, having a spine or a soul, I'm not sure which, maybe a little bit of all, that made that possible, and it was only through the efforts of Julian Assange that ordinary people's names were not exposed, even though that's what The Guardian and the New York Times were hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Mark Davis's talk was explosive because in every documentary or movie made about Julian Assange's life and WikiLeaks, that story is portrayed very differently. That story is portrayed with, oh, Julian Assange was the one who didn't care. There was a dinner and he said everybody's name. If you're working with the U.S., it deserves to be out there. You know, all of these lies we've heard for the last decade of how that experience went down and who was really responsible for whether or not names were redacted was always pinned on Julian Assange. And so Mark Davis's talk really blew that out of the water. But again, not many people reported on Mark Davis's talk, and not many people want to talk about the information he revealed and how that really reset that whole scenario that we've been hearing for the last 9+ years.
No, but the Free Assange Vigil series certainly reported that
Yes.
story. And if you're watching this out in internet land and you are unfamiliar with the Free Assange Vigil series, that's why the fuck Christy's here in the first place. She's my co-host on these. We along with Taylor Hudak and Andrew Smith. And every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, we hold an online vigil in support of Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and other whistleblowers. And we give you any of the latest news regarding the Assange case, or we will say at least once an episode, like I'm about to right now. This is 193 days and $83,000 or $84,000 that Chelsea Manning is facing in fines. We're at 3,272 or 3 days of the arbitrary and illegal detention of Julian Assange for doing nothing other than exposing crimes of empire. We frequently have activists or other supporters of Julian Assange on this program, and it is, I'm told, incredibly entertaining and highly informative.
Yes, we are on, I believe, our 12th show this week. Will be our 12th show. We have had a number of guests on. We've had a number of activists on the ground, just everyday people who are doing activism in their own local areas. And I think we've really kept the conversation going on what is happening. And I mean, we're getting new information every week, so we always have something new to talk about. We have not run out of things to talk about quite yet.
Well, and it's not like the war on whistleblowers is going to slow down during election season. Just in the last couple of weeks, we saw Jeremy Hammond transferred over to the exact same jail that Chelsea Manning is sitting in. There is... I think there's a couple of more people that I haven't verified this, but I've seen whisperings that they're going after a few more people connected to the Stratfor email leaks, the global intelligence files. Dale something. I'll look it up here in a minute. But we're not slowing down anytime soon. In fact, we're talking about trying to get our own asses to London to cover this, to cover the extradition trial. I was talking to our friend Gordon Dimmick this morning a little bit more about that. It's life goals. Where the fuck? There was, I caught something in the chat that, Oh yeah, Judge Kettle said the DNC's argument that Assange and WikiLeaks conspired with the Russian Federation to steal and disseminate the DNC's material is entirely divorced from the facts. Thank you, Mr. K. That is absolutely correct. Not only that, but that lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice.
Yeah.
The Pentagon Papers were held up as evidence that, or as I guess, corroboration that what WikiLeaks did was within the bounds of what the Pentagon Papers did, and that whatever protections were afforded Daniel Ellsberg should also be afforded to Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Which
and in case you haven't seen or followed, Daniel Ellsberg has spoken out many times in defense of Julian Assange. So not only are we comparing Julian Assange's work to the Pentagon Papers, but the man responsible for the Pentagon Papers is in agreement that the same that should be applied to Julian Assange as well, what was afforded to him.
Judge Kettle, in that dismissal, said, along with the DNC's being entirely, their case being divorced from reality, he made a point to say that just because someone prints something you don't like doesn't mean it's illegal, doesn't mean it's in violation of the Espionage Act. Like, the dressing down that Judge Kettle gave the DNC was remarkable, especially when you consider that he's a Bill Clinton appointed judge.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up. That is a very interesting point to make, that he was so outspoken against what the DNC was trying to pursue. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wonder, like, he was a Clinton appointed judge. Like, what kind of backlash did he get after making that ruling?
I imagine he got the full Tulsi Gabbard treatment that she received after stepping down from vice chair of the DNC over their handling of the debates, or that was the reason she cited. I'm sure that Tulsi Gabbard had many other things that she could have pointed to that the DNC was up to, but to save her own ass a little bit, or for a less public hanging than the one that she got, I think she went with the debate schedule. Because anybody could look at that and go, you're scheduling on the night of, like, NFL playoffs, you're scheduling these debates when no one is watching. This is clear bullshit. I'm getting some buffering on the thing. We must be doing a good job, Christy, because they're fucking with the stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Wild, you there?
I'm here. Are you there?
I am.
I lost your video. Okay.
Yeah, no, it completely cut out there for a second. This thing says we're still live.
Yeah, it looks like we're still running on YouTube.
Yeah.
I guess we said the words DNC too much.
All right, I'm gonna close all of that out. But yeah, this says we're still going. Yeah. Oh, and we mentioned Tulsi Gabbard too. I think that's a hell-worthy trespass at this point. Yeah, I guess she just qualified for debate number 4.
Yes, that's awesome, because I really wasn't sure if she could qualify for the 4th debate, if they would allow her. I mean, I guess they could still throw in some wrench, but it's pretty kick-ass if she can come back and then come onto the stage for that 4th debate.
Our co-host Andrew has a wonderful conspiracy theory about that. Did you see that? The Council on Foreign Relations member has a miraculous come from behind victory to become president. I don't know. I still don't know what to think about Tulsi Gabbard and the CFR. I don't. The CFR is not an organization for good. What the fuck is wrong with this thing? Wow, I think we're getting kind of hosed here. This is awesome. What do you think? What do you think about Tulsi Gabbard and the Council on Foreign Relations?
I don't know enough about the two to really speak on that. I thought that was an interesting point that Andrew brought up, but it's something I wanted to look more into because I don't know what her. So she has a background with them. Is that what it is? That.
Well, she's a member.
She's a
member. And I don't know if you're
is she currently a member, or was it something she was a member of?
It's previously? A 5-year term, and you. But I think you're like a honorary member or member emeritus for life, because everyone from like multiple Goldman Sachs CEOs to Henry Kissinger to Dennis Kucinich has been on the Council on Foreign Relations. And after Dennis Kucinich left the Council on Foreign Relations, like he got brought into it immediately after he helped tank the public option in Obamacare. And he did not have a very front and center or public role in tanking the public option, but he was responsible for finally like closing the door on it for good. That's when he was appointed to the Council on Foreign Relations, and he got significantly less radical when his tenure there was up. I saw him on Ron Placone. He interviewed Dennis Kucinich was in the back of a car. He was, and he had like an aide or someone holding the phone to do the thing. And it was when he was still running for, I think, governor of Ohio. I think he was running for that. And yeah, I mean, he was sounding like, I don't know, almost like a Liz Warren kind of progressive. And the Council on Foreign Relations, if you talk to anybody who studied the murder of John F. Kennedy extensively, the Council on Foreign Relations will come up extensively through those conversations. They're, a more or less shadowy think tank that does what it says in the name. They try to manipulate foreign events,
So how do you think Tulsi got involved if her foreign policy is so different from other Democrats?
Well,
how do you think that works out?
So
did she get involved before she got so public about her thoughts on foreign policy?
Yeah, because the way that I understand it, she was a member from 2013 to 2018. Okay. So we would be entering the emeritus phase of her membership there.
Or is it like she was sort of one of those token anti-war people they bring on the council just so people stop,
Yeah, I mean, that's always a possibility too.
Their foreign policy.
Her foreign policy is, I don't like regime change wars. Okay, all wars are regime change wars, but there's a distinction that she makes, and is very unclear in terms of what that actually means. And then there's I support the drone program. If you support the drone program, you support the intelligence that predicates a drone strike.
Right.
We know from years of Iraq and Afghanistan failures, years of being lied to about Syria and about Yemen, and nobody talks about we're still bombing Somalia. and swatting down like false flag after false flag to get us into Iran. We know that this intelligence is faulty. We know that more often than not, it's predicated on payback or personal gain rather than facts on the ground. So to be supportive of drone strikes, even if they're limited, no matter how she wants to couch it, means that you would listen to and rely on the intelligence that leads up to one. It's troubling to me.
Yeah, I wonder, and I don't know this for sure, if her support for the drone program is sort of like the lesser of two evils in her mind, that, well, at least it's not American soldiers going in, but as we all know, there's a lot of collateral damage with drone strikes on the other side. So yeah, I agree that it's not, almost in that way, it's almost like she's anti-war light. So it's like she's against, like you said, regime change wars, but still not quite going all the way as denouncing the drone strike program and the intelligence, or can we say the lack thereof, intelligence that leads to these drone strikes that often kill civilians.
It's that, and it's and look, dude, I get that she's still an active duty member of the Army National Guard.
Right.
I get that there is going.
Man, that crow is so anti-war.
So okay, so everybody can hear the crow. That's fucking awesome. God damn it.
The crow has a lot to say, and I think she'll probably be your next guest.
I have a picture that I put up on Facebook and Twitter like a while ago of this giant trash crow, and it's picking out of a trash can in front of the store I used to work at, and I was like, this needs to be the picture that's on our fucking money. Trash crow definitely. Trash crow definitely needs to be on our
crow.
money.
We have trash pandas. They're raccoons.
Mm-hmm.
We call them trash pandas.
Yeah.
They're trash crows. Love it.
David Rockefeller in 2012. Lord Rothschild and I have known each other for 5 decades. The connection between our two families is strong. And this is also something that goes back to some CFR stuff. The Rockefeller family, I think the Rockefeller family was one of the founders of the Council on Foreign Relations. And the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, as the commenter had pointed out, do go back decades and decades and decades. And the manipulations that they've been able to pull off, both through changing the way that government works and then operating outside of government, have kind of set the overall stage for the completely fascistic, in the Mussolini and Franco sense of corporate state merger that we live in now. Rockefeller didn't become the first billionaire until after antitrust laws were passed, and he had to give up complete and total ownership of his business or businesses. Rothschild is a Jesuit name, and it means red shield. Rothschild Bank is just a proxy for the Jesuit Order and Society of Jesus Big Money. It is the MO of Jesuits to use proxies. And, one of the first videos I ever did about Pete Buttigieg, it's called Pete Buttigieg, CIA Democrat, and I haven't heard anyone else really go into this. But his father was training to be a Jesuit priest, and all of a sudden is shipped to Notre Dame to be a teacher. Pete goes to Jesuit school until he goes to Harvard. There's a long and really storied history of the Jesuit order kind of being the intelligence agency and the black ops arm of the Vatican. I'm not sure if you know any of this. Are you familiar with any of this at all, Christy?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. There's one of my favorite books ever. And it's called The Story of B by Daniel Quinn. It through narrative talks about this Jesuit priest who gets recruited into the operational division of the Jesuit order, and under orders from the Vatican goes to spy on this guy who is preaching a new philosophy of life, and that philosophy of life conflicts heavily with the way that Rome and the Vatican and the Jesuit order specifically had been operating for hundreds of years. It's a really incredible book. I recommend it to anyone. Daniel Quinn also wrote Ishmael and My Ishmael. And Ishmael is a talking gorilla who tells the story of creation and how everything started to go to shit once we started large-scale agriculture and locking up the food. And then charging people for it.
Nice.
Let's see. I don't know how much time you have today, Christy. It's been about an hour. I've got a couple of more things that I wanted to go to.
Yeah, I'm here. If you want to keep talking further, I'm available. So you tell me what you want to hit up next.
I'm trying to remember. Let's see, we did that. Yeah, it's $84,000 in fines that Chelsea Manning is up to as of today.
We're at the $1,000 a day stage, I believe.
Yeah, it was $500 for the first
yeah.
60 days, and then $1,000 a day after that. And one of the things that I can't never not point out when we talk about Chelsea Manning is that the way that the law is written, it's legal for the judge to keep her in jail and to keep giving her these heavy punitive fines if he thinks more time and more fines will break her. But if it can be demonstrated to him, as it should have been from the fucking get-go, that she's not gonna break, she's not gonna fucking talk, she's not gonna walk herself into a perjury trap. If you want her testimony, you've already got it. It's been there for 7 fucking years almost now. Like, then he has to let her go. And all this information is available to him. He's just destroying her because he can. Like, that's
and to make an example as well. I think she's being used as an example to others, whether it's Jeremy Hammond or others down the list that they're planning on bringing in, or just in general. I mean, both Chelsea and Julian are being made examples of that if you leak and publish this kind of information, this is what's going to happen to you. And no rule of law is going to stand in our way of destroying your lives. And then also destroying the people surrounding you, too.
And it's, fucking, it's maddening beyond belief that, the propaganda effort against Julian Assange has succeeded to the level that people aren't at least doing this yellow vest style where every weekend they're out demanding no extradition for Julian Assange, demanding that he be released from Belmarsh, demanding that the UK, Australia, the United States, Sweden, stop operating like fucking, I don't know, a totalitarian dictatorship with you know, occasional differences of opinion. But this is
what came to my mind.
Really a confederation of rogue nations operating with total fucking impunity to interpret the law as it pleases them. And what Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange and Jeremy Hammond, every other fucking whistleblower locked up right now, are experiencing is what Julian Assange called punishment as process. And it really does feel like these people are, as you said, being made examples of.
And like we said at the beginning of the show, Julian Assange predicted this would happen. And he was largely ignored. Jeremy Hammond was part of the Global Intelligence Files, which those Straffer emails talked about how they would go after Julian Assange from country to country, eliminate his financial assets, target his family, target anybody related to WikiLeaks. So those came out just a few years back, which in essence proved what he has been saying for the last decade. And here we are now again with, watching in real time of what is happening and how the U.S. is making these whistleblowers, these publishers, these journalists, how they're just using them as an example of this is what happens when you leak our secrets. This is what happens when you make us look bad. There is no repercussions for the war criminals in the situation of these leaks. No one has been held accountable for these crimes. And it's hard to have any glimmer of hope that eventually maybe there would be somebody held accountable.
Oh, nice. We've got the exact quote from that Stratfor email, thanks to Mr. K. Pile on. Move him from country to country to face various charges for the next 25 years, but seize everything he and his family own, to include every person linked to WikiLeaks. That's a directive.
Yeah.
I'm going to go make a drink. So while I do that, if you could update the good folks out there in internet's land as to what's going on with Susie and the One versus Five Eyes campaign, project, ordeal, whatever you wanna call it, that would be freaking awesome, because I know she was teasing a show tonight.
Yes. So Susie Dawson's One versus Five Eye campaign, she is starting a series of shows tonight, Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. She's calling it Opening the Five Eyes, Exposing the Spies, and she plans to deep dive into how Western intelligence agencies control all aspects of modern society. And yes, she's going to be bringing the receipts, so I'm really excited for this. I think this is going to be an amazing breakdown of not only the One versus Five Eye campaign, but just a lot of what the global intelligence agencies are doing to everyday people. We think of them going after people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, but we don't often talk about the things that they do to everyday people, what they are doing to activists. So I think this is going to be really interesting and enlightening series, and I highly recommend everybody watches, because I think you will learn a lot.
And for those who aren't familiar, we can go through some of Susie's story here a little bit. But I highly recommend, every time I mention Susie Dawson, I recommend two bodies of work that she wrote, and that's Being Julian Assange and Freeing Julian Assange. Being Julian Assange gives you a lot more in-depth detail of the journey of WikiLeaks and a lot of the stuff that Christy and I have discussed on the show this morning. And Freeing Julian Assange, the third part in that series is, and I can't stress this enough, a literal fucking guidebook for how to be an activist and be aware of what is going on around you. It is a first person testimonial of a targeted journalist, and how you combat that, how you keep sane during all of it, what you do when you start to realize that you're being monitored or followed or targeted. It is a vital piece of reading for anyone who's going to be involved in any kind of activism. But something like Occupy, or something like standing up for Julian Assange, or as she's doing right now, going after the Five Eyes intelligence organization. This is, I would call it required reading.
Yes, I completely agree. It's really, it's laid out in almost a love letter to other activists of, this is what I've learned, this is what I've experienced, and this is how to identify it yourself, and this is what to be aware of. And, she has gone through a lot during the Occupy movement, and her involvement in there is where I believe things really started for her. And, up through Unity for J, and now into her new campaign. Her new campaign has, for less than a month, I think, since she announced it, and going through, new bouts of targeting and smearing, and, all these things we should be unifying under and fighting against. And there's still division, there's still targeting for the people that want to stand up for these things. And right now Susie is standing up against the Five Eyes, and that should be something we all want to see happen.
And if you aren't familiar, the Five Eyes that we're talking about here are the intelligence networks in the UK and her original colonial subsidiaries of Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Caitlin Johnstone wrote a piece in response to Julian Assange officially becoming a political prisoner, and she referred to Australia as a fake state. And I don't know if you read that piece or not.
I haven't. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I do love her work, and I feel like she has a very straightforward and just a really interesting way of breaking down the pieces of Julian Assange's story, and really anything Caitlin Johnstone writes. I really like her interpretation and the way she words things. And I did see she used the quote from Julian about that he said he loves and he misses his birth country, but it's not a free state. I think he called it a free state. Basically saying that, Australia is not what it once was, or I don't know if he ever considers it to be really free, in essence of being controlled by other countries and agendas.
Well, and a lot of that bears out into reality when you look at the meeting that just took place between Australia's PM and Trump. If Australia as a country was concerned about, I don't know, any of this stuff that we've been talking about, free press, the life and livelihood of its own citizen, war crimes, not wanting to be adjacent to them or responsible for them. Like, if Australia wasn't essentially functioning still as a client state of the UK or a subsidiary of the Crown, I feel like we would see a lot more movement from them. They've already gone to bat for journalists before, but they're making a distinction with Julian Assange, and that has much more to do with, as Nils Melzer said, politics than rule of law. This is it all comes back down to the spread of Mussolini or Franco style fascism, or as our co-host Andrew has put forth the idea, like a Stalinist type merger of corporation and state. Any way you look at it, the truth gets left out and the workers get left out.
So I found Julian's original quote here. He tweeted this on February 20th of 2018, and he said, "I love my birth country, Australia, but as a state, it doesn't exist. Here is why it had its prime minister denounce me, move to cancel my passport, secretly pass data on me to the U.S. intelligence, and has never made representations on my behalf. It is owned by U.S. UK corporations."
Yep, and the title from Caitlin's article is "Novelty Joke: Prime Minister from Fake Country Meets with Trump, Silent on Assange." And yeah, the quote is, "I love my birth country, Australia, but as a state, it doesn't exist."
And like in the very first line, she says, "Scott Morrison, the novelty joke prime minister from the imaginary nation of Australia, met with his boss, Donald Trump, today." And, yeah, no lies detected there. Pretty accurate.
Okay, so Quinn's saying that Australia is a Commonwealth nation, and in the law, the Crown has total veto power. So they really are, a functioning subsidiary of the UK, which brings me to Jeremy Corbyn. Our friend Gordon Dimmock has made the point a few times that were Jeremy Corbyn serious at all about the fact that Julian Assange is locked up in Belmarsh, or what that represents in terms of global free press, or what that means in terms of how he personally, Jeremy Corbyn, views the illegal and arbitrary detention of an innocent man who's been left to be slowly tortured to death on his home turf. And Gordon will point out, and I have pointed this out too, and I think a few other people have as well, that if Corbyn was serious about any of this, or serious about defeating Boris Johnson, every day he would be nailing these bastards over and over with Julian Assange, with how dare you do this to this man, the shame that you are bringing onto your own country, onto the countries that you've collaborated with. It should be a daily talking point. It should also be a daily talking point for any of these fucking Democrats that are running in this country for president, and that's not happening. The only person who will really say anything about it is Tulsi Gabbard. If debate number 4 is going to be the last debate that she participates in because of DNC fuckery, and she does not say his name on that stage, I'm gonna be fucking livid, No,
I completely agree. And I think with Jeremy Corbyn, it's interesting that, yeah, he spoke out and said something on Julian after the arrest, but yeah, the further on we go, he doesn't mention him, he doesn't talk about him, he doesn't, what a great point to be using in your fight to get elected and to shine a light on those that you're opposing. And the same with the Democrats here. It's what a great thing you could use against Trump to speak out against this. Are they still under the spell of Russiagate? I don't know. Are they being told not to talk about him? I don't know, but it's almost a missed opportunity for them.
It's a missed opportunity every single time, because this is, without a doubt, one of the most important issues that we need to be looking at.
Because whoever is president in 2020, whoever gets elected from this election, is going to have to deal with this situation. If we're not still waiting for the extradition hearing in the UK, it's scheduled for February 2020. The likelihood that it's going to be all said and done then is probably pretty low. Whoever's president is going to have to, be approached on this situation.
I think it was an interview just a couple of days ago with John Shipton, Julian's father, where he said it would not surprise him if the UK extended these extradition hearings out years, 2-3 years.
Right.
What would surprise
a very long battle.
What would surprise me is if it was 1 or 2 days, extradition granted, you're out. But I see it going more the long dragged out, slog through the judicial system. I don't know enough about the UK court system to know whether or not his UK attorneys will be allowed to see any of the evidence being presented to ship him or not. If anyone in the chat is familiar with the UK justice system, slownewsdaypodcast@gmail.com or at slownewsdayshow on Twitter, because I would like to dive into that.
Yeah, this, like you said, it's likely going to get dragged out. They really have the upper hand as far as being able to drag it out, and obviously his health isn't doing so well as he's still in the health ward in Belmarsh. There's no plans to release him out to a better medical facility even so that he can be present and healthy for trial. They're not allowing him a computer. They're barely allowing what it sounds like for them. He's not getting his mail, and that's the only way we've heard that he's allowed to get court documents is the lawyers have to actually post the documents to him. They can't bring them in when they go to see him. So he's really not being afforded the ability to prepare for this trial. He cannot call his U.S. lawyers. He cannot even call his parents. So, I mean, the UK is doing everything they can to make this as difficult and inhumane as possible.
Yeah, punishment is process. Like, he couldn't have been more right about that. And Nils Melzer is advocating, this man needs to see a mental health professional. When he was in court over this bullshit bail thing, they asked him if he understood, and his quote was, "I guess the lawyers will explain it to me."
Yeah, that's not really. I guess my
Assange.
lawyers will explain it to me.
Yeah, not really. I don't really understand. My lawyers are gonna. That's not Julian Assange.
No, and I don't know if he said that because he was confused as to why they were suddenly discussing the bail issue, and that threw him off.
Yeah.
But that is not a normal response that we've seen from him, even in these other court hearings, when he is allowed to make a response and answer questions like that. So like Nils Melzer said in this article from the Morning Star, that is very concerning because that does not sound like him. And that also puts more questions of, is his health deteriorating more? Is his mental state not, up to par? If he's not feeling well, if he's going through other medical issues and he can't focus and he's not even really being kept up to date on to what's going on. So can you imagine being in a dark hole for 23 hours a day and getting then thrown into some video conference over a hearing? You barely even know what's happening. So, they're doing everything they can to confuse him, to keep him in the dark, to really, we keep having these little technical hearings here and there, and every now and then he gets to pop them on the video link. And if you're not talking to your lawyers on a regular basis and you're not reading these court documents, how in the world are you supposed to be ready to make any kind of statement?
No, it's it's deliberate. It's we know from as early on as like 2010 that they've been out to break this man, and the forced isolation, both in Belmarsh and in the embassy. I mean, we know from decades of reporting on torture that solitary confinement in and of itself is a form of torture. But to then have someone in solitary in a medical ward where they don't necessarily know what drugs are being pumped into their body. They don't really know how they're being treated, and I'm not assuming that you've ever spent any time in a hospital jail. I'm gonna guess you haven't. But they are not known to be paragons of medical superiority or efficiency.
Right. And yeah, the lack of quality care. I mean, he was probably able to take care of himself a little bit more in the embassy by making his own food and really helping nourish the fact that he was not getting outside, he was not getting sunlight, but at least maybe he was able to eat well. He was maybe allowed to read books. I mean, there for a while he did have the internet, so he did have an outlet to the outside world, but after that was taken from him in the embassy, you know, he did have some opportunities, albeit not great, to help himself. And now he's in a medical facility in a prison, one of the harshest prisons in Britain, and under this solitary confinement. For what reason, we still have not been told.
Yeah.
You know, he's not allowed to talk to anybody. When he is moved around the prison, the WikiLeaks article said it was under controlled moves, so they put everybody on lockdown, they clear the hallways. He's not getting any human interaction more than probably the prison guards and the doctors, you know, and then he gets 2 social visits a month. I'm not sure how much access in addition his lawyers are getting.
None. His lawyers are the social visits. He doesn't have separate visits. And in fact, they've been scheduling those visits around the time when he would be able to go call his mom or dad.
Right, and John Shipton had even said that when, I think one of the first times he went to see him, he was he left waiting for Julian for like 45 minutes to an hour because I think they were also scheduling medical appointments around this time too. So yeah, his doctor's appointments are conflicting with any time he does get with anybody else. And that's all a form of control to show him, to show his visitors, to show his lawyers that ultimately the prison and the state is controlling his access.
And as you pointed out a couple of times earlier too, to set an example to anyone who would publish the crimes of empire, to anyone who would leak information about what's going on. And the overall removal of WikiLeaks from the playing field of geopolitical reporting has been a long-term goal of multiple administrations and multiple countries. Any outlet that dares to print the truth about war or print the truth about financial manipulations or child sex trafficking or all of these horrific crimes committed by people in the name of short-term or long-term greed. If you do that, you're going to be smeared. You're going to be smeared often. You're going to be smeared by people that you thought were allies, even. And to have all that on top of forced isolation, on top of conditions which are set up in advance to deteriorate your mental health, not to mention the fact that more than one person has put forth the idea that Assange was being somnambulantly tortured while in the embassy. Somnambulant torture, if you guys are unaware watching, it takes place on a sonic level that you don't necessarily hear in your waking self, but it goes straight into your brain factory there. It's like learning by osmosis, except for it's torture.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're talking about a man who was put into prison on a bail charge. He is being treated, if not worse, at the same level of mass murderers, of terrorists. He's being moved around a prison like he's some sort of mafia boss that they have to, you know, prevent the prisoners from rioting as he moves through the halls. And it's this. Melzer has a really good quote in this article. He says, if no one likes Assange, if everybody thinks he's a rapist, a hacker, a spy, and a narcissist who doesn't care for his cat, then people become more tolerant to the idea that he actually deserves persecution and abuse. But once the precedent has been set, it can and will be applied to any other journalist. So we've now, for the better part of a decade, have heard how awful of a person Julian Assange is. And it's built up this smear campaign to convince people that he deserves this kind of treatment, that he must be such an awful, scary criminal who exposes our secrets, that he deserves this. He deserves to be in solitary confinement. He deserves not to be treated well. He deserves to be in the most high security prison in Britain because he is such a dangerous threat to the public. And then you have his father, his mother on Twitter talking about Julian Assange is an intelligent person. He's a gentle soul. He's very kind. He's a gentleman. He's a nice dresser. He takes care of himself. Yes, he does kind of live a very vagabond life as he was working for WikiLeaks and traveling. That's because he was traveling from place to place. And he was taking it upon himself to do all these things. He retracted 10,000 names in one night to make sure that the job got done. He is, if you read any interview with him, if you read any book published by him, if you even watch an interview with him, this scary criminal person that the media wants you to think does not exist. If you take the time to introduce yourself to Julian Assange, that those two personalities are not the same.
No.
But
go ahead. Sorry, I had to react to that.
Here we are, with the public largely seeming to believe, either ignoring the situation or just believing, well, he must deserve it. He must deserve it. We have this almost psyop that the media has done to the public concerning Julian Assange, into tricking them into believing that this man deserves this treatment. And thankfully, people are waking up. People are introducing themselves to Julian Assange. People are introducing themselves to WikiLeaks. You know, he said, and Gordon Dimmick has really taken that as a rallying cry, that we have to take his place. We have to take his place while he is in Belmarsh, while he is closed off to the world, and he can't speak upon these things for himself. He can't defend himself. And that's really what we're doing with not only, you know, the work that Unity for J has done, and that we are continuing on with the Free Assange vigils, but every time you talk about Julian Assange, every time you go out into the public and do an action, whether you're wearing a t-shirt, you're making a sign, you're posting quotes or links to WikiLeaks drops, to interviews, if you're carrying a WikiLeaks book around with you, you are putting that seed into people to realize that they're being lied to. We're being lied to, not only about Julian Assange, but so many other things in the world. But this specific case, you're being lied to by the media, by the politicians, by governments.
You are absolutely 100% correct on that. I've got about 5 minutes before the band comes in. If you guys aren't familiar, where I'm at right now is the back porch of the studio where I've been shooting the interview episodes more often than not. This is a functional working recording studio / wood cabinet shop, guitar building shop / backyard barbecue kick it area. But because it's a working studio, I come in, I book time here and pay to have Barry produced the shows when they need production, but there are also local bands that come in here. The guy who owns the place, Barry Tanner, once a week opens the studio to high school and junior high kids who want to come in and learn instruments and learn how to play as a band together. It's a community center in that aspect. So it's either going to get really, really loud over this broadcast, or I'm going to wrap it up. And because there was a fucking band playing when I was interviewing Whitney Webb the other day, and I couldn't fucking avoid that, it got a little, I don't know, frustrating for me. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I'll be back at some point today. Christy, will you please let everyone know where they can find you, and again, just touch on the projects that you are a part of currently?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at ChristyMKD84. You can follow Unity for J at Unity 4 letter J. You can also follow Susie's campaign at 1verse5I on Twitter. I am the co-host along with Steve of the Free Assange Vigil. We do every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern over on the Action for Assange channel. And yeah, I'm just around on Twitter helping promote events through Unity for J. Really trying to get a lot of ground action going. September 28th is a big day because there's going to be a rally at Belmarsh Prison in London. A lot of other cities around the world are also going to be doing sort of like sister rallies that day. And as we get into October 4th is the anniversary of WikiLeaks. October 11th is the 6-month anniversary of Julian Assange's arrest. So there's going to be a lot more activity going on around the world to mark those days. And we really want to keep building through the months. I mean, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into winter. A lot of people are going to get inside and not do anything, but we really want to keep this momentum going through February, when the extradition hearing is scheduled for the end of February 2020. We don't want people to forget. We don't want people to forget about Julian Assange. We don't want to forget about what human rights violations are happening in this case. And now that he's officially a political prisoner today, we've kind of opened this door into a new world. This is what's going to happen to journalists. So we got to keep going. We got to keep the actions up. We got to keep telling people and informing people, because the media's not doing it. We have to just keep going. And part of doing that is to do these amazing shows with independent media like yourself. And I just thank you for having me on today and getting the opportunity to talk about Julian Assange and the situation more and more.
I agree with that 100%. And you can find me on Twitter at Slow News Day Show. If you're here, you know where to find me on YouTube. Please hit the like button if you have been digging the show today. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Ding the notification bell. It doesn't guarantee that you'll get notified because, I speak truth on YouTube, so they don't let you know when I'm live. But it increases your odds. And if you support independent media and you would like to add this channel to the independent media that you currently support, you can do so by going to patreon.com/slownewsday. I think that's about everything on the business end. Yeah. This will do it for this Sunday's live broadcast. I am going to start every Sunday at 10-ish, because I can't promise to be on time. But right around 10 o'clock, from now on every Sunday till noon, this will be a regular thing. With my schedule and my kids' schedule, it's hard for me really to have a set day to broadcast, but I recently picked up one job and was able to walk away from another. So I can now 100% commit to 10 to noon Pacific every Sunday. I will try to always have a guest with me. And that'll wrap it up. I'm Steve Poikinen. This has been Slow News Day, and good luck to us all.